For 60 years, the Jackson family has been the most recognizable black family in America. 9 children, 1 billion records sold, and Michael Jackson alone earning more than most artists ever will in a lifetime. But behind the success, the fame, the music, and the mythology, there was a family. And families carry everything. The brilliance and the damage. The love and the cruelty. All of it passes from one generation to the next, whether anyone wants it or not. Joseph Walter Jackson was born in 1928 in Arkansas. He grew up poor with no visible future. By the early 1960s, he was living in Gary, Indiana, working as a crane operator at a steel mill. He married Catherine Screws, and together they had 9 children he could not financially support. He had once chased music himself, played guitar in a local rhythm and blues group called the Falcons, but it went nowhere. So instead, he looked at his children and decided to build the band he never became. The story of the Jackson 5, at least a version Motown would later sell, fits perfectly into the music industry's rags to riches narrative. But that version leaves out what happened inside the Jackson home before anything else began. And nearly every member of the family agrees on one thing. Joe Jackson was abusive. At its mildest description, he would sit with a belt across his lap, watching rehearsals for hours, punishing whichever child made a mistake, sometimes up to 5 hours a day. Michael Jackson spoke about those years repeatedly in interviews. He described being thrown into walls, beaten with cords, struck with whatever was nearby. He said his mother would scream at Joe to stop, warning him he would kill one of them. Even as an adult, Michael said seeing his father made him physically ill. Joe Jackson did not deny using discipline, but in a 2003 BBC interview, he insisted he use a switch and a belt, not beating. He drew a distinction between whipping and beating, as if language could soften the memory. It didn't. Not all the Jackson children remembered it the same way. Jermaine, Marlon, and Janet have said their father's discipline kept them focused, kept them out of trouble, and ultimately gave them a way out of Gary. To them, Joe was harsh but necessary. But for Michael and for LaToya, the story was different. What happened in that house left scars that success could never erase. While Joe was building the Jackson 5, he was also living a second life, one the family was never meant to know about. In the early 1970s, he began an affair with a woman named Cheryl Terrell. It lasted 25 years. On August 30th, 1974, she gave birth to Joe's 10th child, a daughter named Giovanni Jackson. Catherine knew about the affair. A devout Jehovah's Witness, she filed for divorce in 1973 and again in 1979, but both times she withdrew after being urged by church elders to stay. Giovanni grew up in Las Vegas, separate from the Jackson household. She wasn't raised with her siblings. She wasn't invited to family events. She wasn't allowed at Neverland Ranch. And when the Jackson family stood together publicly during Michael's legal battles, she was not part of that unity. Neither Michael nor Janet ever publicly acknowledged her. In 2018, Giovanni released a memoir titled Bastard Child. She described growing up excluded, invisible to the family her father built in public. She did meet Michael once at Neverland when she was 29. She described it as cold, distant, almost like she didn't exist to him. He was warm toward her daughter, but not toward her. And even Joe's relationship with her was different. The Jackson children grew up calling him Joseph, not Dad. Strict, controlled, distant. But Giovanni had a softer version of him. She could call him Dad. And that difference became something the rest of the family could never ignore. By 1975, the Jackson 5 left Motown for Epic Records. They won a legal battle, but lost the rights to their name, becoming simply the Jacksons. Michael, now 17, began pulling away. He had spent his entire childhood working and never experienced a normal adolescence. His development, especially socially, had been interrupted. His first known girlfriend was actress Tatum O'Neal. She was 12 when they met. He was 17. Tatum had already become the youngest Academy Award winner for Paper Moon. Michael later described their relationship as something innocent, confusing, and emotionally overwhelming. He remembered sitting on her bed, holding her hand, and calling it magical. But Tatum's account was different. She said they were never really a couple, and that she often felt like the more mature one. Two versions of the same moment, shaped by entirely different realities. In 1983, Randy Jackson's personal life intersected with another unexpected story. He was dating model Bernadette Roby. When she feared for her safety, she sought help from Tina Turner. Having survived years of abuse in her own marriage to Ike Turner, Tina knew what danger looked like. When Randy arrived at her home, tensions escalated. He broke in, and according to multiple accounts, Tina confronted him with a gun. A shot was fired. Randy was injured, and later confirmed the incident himself. By 1984, the Jackson brothers launched a victory tour. It was announced at Tavern on the Green in New York, backed by promoter Don King, and driven largely by Joe Jackson himself. But tensions were already rising. Ticketing systems were criticized, fans were frustrated, and accusations of exploitation followed the tour before it even began. Michael publicly distanced himself financially, donating his share to charity. By the end, he declared the last time he would tour with his brothers, and it was... Then came January 27, 1984. A Pepsi commercial shoot, a pyrotechnic accident. Fire ignited in Michael's hair during filming. For seconds, he kept performing unaware of the flames. He was rushed to the hospital with second-degree burns. The injury left a permanent scar, and something less visible but far more lasting. Pain management led to prescription use, and dependence followed. That same year, Paula Abdul joined as choreographer for the tour rehearsals. According to reports, a relationship developed between her and Jackie Jackson. When Jackie's wife discovered it, confrontation followed, and the incident escalated violently in a parking lot. Jackie was injured. The public explanation, however, was far more controlled. A rehearsal accident, a knee injury, nothing more. By 1987, Michael released Bad, and his personal relationships became increasingly complicated. Tatiana Thompson was hired for the tour after appearing in the music video for The Way You Make Me Feel. On stage, she kissed him during a live performance. The next day, she was removed from the tour without explanation. Around the same time, Brooke Shields became one of Michael's closest companions. He described her as one of the great loves of his life, but Brooke described it differently, as friendship, not romance. Even when Michael leaned in to kiss her, she pulled away. Two perspectives never fully aligned. In 1986, the world saw Michael in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. The story claimed he slept inside it to slow aging. It was false, but it was also intentional, planted by his own team to build mystery, to feed curiosity, to increase demand. The persona was becoming part marketing, part myth. Around the same time, he purchased a chimpanzee named Bubbles. The animal lived with him, traveled with him, dressed like him, a companion, but also a reflection of isolation. Eventually, Bubbles had to be relocated as he became too dangerous for domestic life. In 1989, LaToya Jackson appeared on the cover of Playboy. Raised in a strict religious household, the move shocked the family. She claimed later that her then manager forced her into decisions she did not fully control. Her relationship with the family fractured further when she accused Michael publicly of abuse. Years later, she retracted parts of her statements, saying she had been coerced and threatened. The truth became tangled between control, fear, and survival. By the early 1990s, internal fractures within the family were visible. Legal issues, public disputes, betrayals, and competing narratives defined their relationships. And while Michael prepared Dangerous, the rest of the family struggled with fading relevance and unresolved conflict. In 1993, the first major criminal allegations against Michael emerged. A civil settlement followed in 1994, but the damage to public perception was irreversible. He insisted it was not an admission of guilt, but a decision made under legal pressure. In 1994, he married Lisa Marie Presley. The marriage lasted less than 3 years. Public, scrutinized, and deeply questioned. Lisa later described it as real, but complicated by emotional immaturity and instability. In 2003, A documentary reignited allegations, leading to a full criminal trial in 2005. Michael Jackson was ultimately acquitted on all charges, but the cost, emotional, financial, and reputational, was immense. In 2009, he died at age 50, caused by acute propofol intoxication. A doctor was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. After his death, his music catalog grew even more valuable, eventually becoming a multi-billion-dollar estate. Even in absence, his influence remained global. And through all of this, one truth stays consistent. The Jackson family was not just a success story. It was a system of brilliance, pressure, trauma, and survival. A dynasty built on talent and fractured by the weight of everything it carried. 60 years later, it is still impossible to separate what was music from what was pain.